Good Friday evening to you. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Welcome to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon, and we're pleased to be joined by Ellis Williams, Cleveland Browns beat reporter for cleveland.com. First time on the show, Ellis. Appreciate the time. And obviously, we're getting ready to talk some Browns. So you've had a chance to look at things. The Browns will play differently under Kevin Stefanski offensively.
Right.
Let's dive into the roster. What are some of the things that the Browns need to upgrade and improve the way Kevin Stefanski wants them to play on the offensive side of the ball?
Right. Well, let's get the obvious out of the way. Regardless of coach, there's some offensive line issues with this team. So they're going to have to address the offensive tackle, both sides, left and right, and that right guard spot. So that's going to happen regardless of what coach came in here, whether that's through the draft or free agency, possibly a trade now, as news broke last night on a guy who might be on the trade market now. So that's the first and most important thing. You got to protect Baker Mayfield and figure out who you have there as an investment. After that, Kevin Stefanski, coming from Minnesota, running a Gary Kubiak offense, they featured a lot of 2, even 3 tight end sets, and that's one of the weaker positions on this team right now at the Cleveland Browns. It sounds like David Njoku will be back, but after that, we're not really sure. Steven Carlson had some moments last year, but after those 2 guys, we're not really sure. And in Minnesota, they had 2 solid guys, Kyle Rudolph and then the rookie out of Alabama. So I would say on the offensive side of the ball, those are the 2 top spots. I mean, really 3 across the offensive line, and then finding some answers and ultimately depth at tight end.
I know you've looked at the offense that they ran in Minnesota. What do you like about it? What do you get a feel for as far as what that offense is and what it wants to do?
Right. So it's a lot of zone offense, zone running scheme, wide zone, inside zone in your simplest forms. Play action passing. Look, Baker Mayfield's going to have an opportunity to look off defenders and hit guys deep like Odell Beckham Jr. Stephon Diggs for the Minnesota Vikings led the league in deep target share yards, and their games are a bit comparable. You know, Odell might be the flashier, more Hollywood guy, but both Stephon Diggs and Odell Beckham are going to be able to stretch the field in that way. And in Minnesota, it was the Dalvin Cook show, and I expect it to still be the Nick Chubb show here in Cleveland, but then you can sprinkle in Kareem Hunt, which is a weapon Kevin Stefanski didn't have in Minnesota. So it's going to be a lot of play action, like I said, wide zone, capitalizing on both Chubb and Kareem Hunt's ability to get to the outside, and then on those second and mediums, third and shorts, expect some deep passes. That ultimately, in its simplest form, is what Kevin Stefanski is going to do with this offense.
What about the way that impacts a guy like Baker Mayfield? I mean, it would seem to play to his strengths.
Yeah, and that's what you're hoping for. Baker is going to have to take advantage of one-on-one coverage because these teams are going to have to come down, stack the box against guys, like I said, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Where you worry with Baker last year was when you get him into these 5- and 7-step drops and you have 3-4 guys running deep, and with an offensive line in front of him that couldn't hold for those 4 or 5 seconds you need, that's where you worry. The goal, again, is to simplify this offense, make Baker's reads a lot easier, and with the addition of Alex Van Pelt at his press conference, he spoke about working on Baker just as a football player. His footwork needs help. He wants to switch which foot he's going to have forward. So from scheme all the way to fundamentals, they're bringing everyone in here to really help Baker to put his best foot forward in 2020.
The other thing about it is it seems like last year they just didn't play to their strengths. I mean, it's kind of like, well, we're going to do this regardless of whether we have the guys to do it or not.
Right, and that's exactly how it felt. And to a point, it felt like they just were calling plays to calling them. Kevin Stefanski is Ivy League guy. This whole regime seems like they're Ivy League now, right? And he's going to find the mismatches and exploit them. It's going to be, of course, up to Baker Mayfield to take those calls and those reads and make the right decisions. But Stefanski's a guy who's going to put Baker Mayfield in the right position. Kirk Cousins just came off probably his best career year in Minnesota, so the ingredients are all there. It's really going to be on Baker this year, assuming everything comes together like it did in Minnesota, which from what I've heard from my connections in the Minneapolis media, Kevin Stefanski checks out, and it sounds like he's not going to have the play calling responsibilities either, so he'll just be able to focus on the game plan and being a head coach, something that Freddie Kitchens didn't do last year either.
When you look at the other side of the ball, bring in another young, bright head or coordinator in Joe Woods. What do you expect to see on that side of the football from the Browns under Joe Woods?
Yeah, Joe Woods has a lot of promise and was sought after for obvious reasons with his defensive background and passing game coordinator job in San Francisco. He really rejuvenated Richard Sherman, who was, of course, Legion of Boom, All-Pro in Seattle, then an Achilles injury, and really we all left him for dead. And before you know it, he's back and has another All-Pro year and helps bring the Seattle defense to the Super Bowl. Now, you can ask, all right, was it the front four, front five, really the 6 options they had in San Francisco? I saw some good tweets when Joe Woods was named the defensive coordinator here, like, oh, is he bringing all those first-round picks over with him too? It's pretty easy to have a good defense when the quarterback doesn't have time to throw. But you have to assume that Joe Woods fundamentally is going to get these defensive backs, Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, playing their best football. He mentioned Mike Tomlin as a mentor, who, Mike Tomlin had started in Minnesota, and then, of course, we know what he's doing in Pittsburgh, one of the most respected and most talented coaches in the NFL. So from who he credits as a mentor and his history with San Francisco and in other stops in his secondary, you expect the secondary to be strong, and, of course, he's going to coach a get-after-the-football type with the defensive line, including Myles Garrett, who will be back.
Well, and to be honest, everybody seems to think the Browns' defensive line underperformed. There were some big-name guys that didn't have the type of year they were expected to. And then, of course, Myles Garrett gets suspended for a number of games. It would seem that the pieces are there to be a dominant defensive front.
Right, they are. And Joe Woods, like any coordinator, could not be more excited to work with Myles Garrett. You see that guy, and you see all the potentials there. And really, I think losing Myles Garrett last year, though, of course, his actions were not acceptable, and we've moved past that. But he was, in a way, a big winner from last season. We saw how that defense changed from night and day. Sure, they did fine against Miami, but once they got to that second Pittsburgh game, and after that, they were just getting ran all over. Myles Garrett really showed his value there. And it's unsure whether Olivier Vernon will be back, definitely not at that number. So they might need to shore up the defense line a little more. But guys like Sheldon Richardson really stepped up in Myles Garrett's absence. Larry Ogunjobi, also Chad Thomas. They've got some bodies there. And with what Joe Woods was able to do in San Francisco, I think he's going to be able to maximize that unit as long as they add another guy.
When you look at the roster and what it potentially looks like, what areas on the defense concern you? Obviously, talent's there for the line.
Yep.
What concerns you?
Yeah, so right now, this team's built upon its front, like we said, headlined by Myles Garrett. You like the young corners in Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams. Still have a lot to prove, but they've shown flashes. Where you worry is the safety and linebacker positions on this team. Sheldrick Redwine probably played a little too early last year, and he'll have opportunities next year, but he can't come in being your only true starting safety. They're going to have to address that position, whether it's through free agency in the draft. And then at linebacker, Mary Kay Cabot, cleveland.com, reporting that Joe Schobert will not be back with the Cleveland Browns. That I don't want to say it's surprising, but paying double-digit millions to a linebacker that wasn't going to completely swing your defense anyway probably wasn't the right move regardless. So at safety and linebacker, Mack Wilson's really the only guy coming back with real playing time. It remains to be seen if Taki can develop into the guy they thought he could be when they drafted him last year. Look, no defense is perfect, even though that's the goal. I think you would prioritize safety over linebacker. You can finagle it in ways. Look, if you're going to have bad linebackers, it's not ideal, but if your pass rush is going to be strong and your corners are locked down, then you can make things work. But definitely safety and linebacker are the two positions you will see the Browns address both in the draft and free agency coming up. And
the challenge is that's the middle of your defense.
Right.
So that's you got to get that fixed.
You do. You definitely do. And look, Joe Woods is going to play a type of style of bend, don't break. He talked a lot about how a lot of these defenses are all the cover three clouds and whatnot. So look, are the Browns probably going to be allowing some big rushing games again this year? It's looking that way. But if he can get a mantra and a culture that they don't break in the red zone like they did last year, then those yardage in between the 20s may not matter as much, which the linebackers are going to be accountable for.
Good stuff. Ellis Williams, Browns beat reporter from cleveland.com. We're going to take a quick time out. On the other side of break, we'll take a look at free agency, the official tampering. About 2 weeks away. It's probably going on right now. Ellis Williams and I will be back to talk free agency in the Cleveland Browns. Here on More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Stay with us.
The heart-pounding, fast-breaking action of college basketball is back when the 2020 Mid-American Conference Basketball Tournament returns to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse March 11th through the 14th. Presented by Visit Myrtle Beach. Pulses will rise and hearts will race as the men and women of the MAC put it all on the line. Tickets for the MAC tournament are on sale now online at rocketmortgagefieldhouse.com and at all Northern Ohio discount drug marts. MAC Tournament Basketball. Be there.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had two choices. I was accepted into a four-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. The girls' state semis and championships are at St. John Arena. Go to Ticketmaster.com, type in OHSAA in the search Artists, Venues, and Events, and you will be able to find tickets for all the OHSAA championships. That's Ticketmaster.com, type in OHSAA in the search Artists, Venues, and Events, and you'll see all the championship ticket information. Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon, and we are joined by Ellis Williams, Cleveland Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com. Ellis, some news broke that kind of intrigues Browns fans yesterday. Yep. Trent Williams, Washington Redskins tackle who sat out last year with a contract dispute, didn't like the team, has been granted permission to go ahead and seek trades. Now, he was a guy John Dorsey loved. Yep. Remains to be seen how much the Browns like him. Are you at least intrigued by Trent Williams?
I think you have to be intrigued, and there's a feel that here we go again type of thing. Remember the trade deadline in October was this huge whirlwind that John Dorsey was going to get this deal done. But now we're at a point where time has passed and things have changed. There's, of course, a new regime in Cleveland, and it remains to be seen what price tag they're willing to match Washington on. The good with Trent Williams is that he's 31, going to be 32. He's going to only be about a $12 million cap hit this year. Those are numbers that the Browns can work with. What you don't like is the extension that he's looking for. He's been quoted saying he wants to be the highest paid tackle on the market, and the years after that. He knows this is going to be his last big payday, so he's probably going to be looking for 4, maybe 5 years, and it remains to be seen if the Browns are willing to hit that mark. It's a big investment for a guy who had injury concerns last year, is, like I said, 32 and, of course, trending the other way. And a guy who didn't play football for a whole year. You just don't know where he's at physically and mentally. Now, his agent put out a video of him training and boxing and doing the squats. One of those hype videos where he does one box jump and all of a sudden you think he can be Zion Williamson out here. But those videos are all nice and great, but there's a difference between being ready to play right now in March, and then when you put the pads on in August, September, and you're like, oh man, a year off, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I have no idea how Trent Williams feels. I'm sure he's excited to play football and get new life leaving Washington, but there are some red flags that make you at least say, okay, no, let's not break the bank for Trent Williams if you're the Browns. And a first-round pick seems steep right now, especially where we know that's a pick 10, even second at 41 seems a little high. So I'm not sure they'll be able to meet, but to answer your initial question about intrigue, of course you have to have it as the Browns have holes across that entire offensive line. You
kind of touched on it. What do you think what would you be willing to give up? Because you got to trade something.
Right.
And I'm tending to agree with you. I certainly wouldn't do 10, probably wouldn't do 41.
Right.
Third round, now you've got my interest.
Yeah, a third rounder might work, and if we're sitting here saying a third rounder works, then the front office in Washington saying, no, we're going to need a second or a first round pick. That's probably how these things play out. Now, could you do a third and maybe a tight end like David Njoku? Of course, the 2017 first-round pick. If he still has, some good grace in Washington, who knows how the executives view him there. Jordan Reed has retired in Washington. They've got some holes at tight end. Vernon Davis obviously isn't the long-term answer. So maybe a third in Njoku works. After that, it gets tough because this is one of the deeper drafts at offensive line and some skill position spots, specifically a receiver. And not that the Browns are in dire need of a receiver, but a second or third round receiver wouldn't be a terrible pick either. So you have to understand that you're not only trading assets, but you're also signing Trent Williams long term. So that combination, again, is going to make it tough to move on Trent Williams, but nothing would surprise me. It's March.
The other thing to keep in mind is Trent Williams' position coach for a number of years in Washington was Bill Callahan, who is now the Browns' offensive line coach, and you can be sure that's going to be a guy that likes him. Another name that's intriguing is Jason Peters.
Yep.
He played for the Eagles, and keep in mind Andrew Berry, Brown's new GM, was in that front office a year ago. Really well thought of, 9-time Pro Bowler. He's a little older. They're going to let him go via free agency,
right.
And the thought is he's going to get some significant interest and probably won't be back with the Eagles. You look at him, he's a little older.
Yep. He is a little older, I believe 38, 39, somewhere around there.
Yep.
But what you do like about Jason Peters is a few things. It's the classic scenario where I like you, but I'm not going to marry you. He'd be a one-year stopgap for whatever the Browns decide to do going down the pipeline at left tackle. You could even draft a guy at 10, a guy like Tristan Wirfs, who played right tackle at Iowa, plug him in at right tackle, let him play there for a year, have Peters hold down left tackle, and then you slowly train Wirfs over to the left. That's a scenario I could see working out quite well. The money is going to make sense. Peters will probably command somewhere around 12, maybe 14 million. It's not going to be a top market for him, like an 18 million, anything crazy like that. But 12 or 14 seems reasonable for him. And again, that 1 year stopgap makes a lot of sense compared to locking up Trent Williams for, say, 4 to 5 years.
The other thing about that is you also then have a mentor for whomever you draft, because you're probably going to take an offensive lineman at 10, and you basically put that guy's locker next to his and say, this guy's a 9-time Pro Bowler. Pick his brain, learn everything you can about being a professional.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up, and to pair him with Joe Bitonio and J.C. Treader, the two clear leaders of that locker room behind Baker Mayfield, of course. So you'd have a real veteran presence in the locker room and, of course, in the offensive line meeting rooms to groom younger talent. I think that's something the Browns definitely are considering.
Now, there's a couple of guys that you also like in free agency that are potentially out there, not quite as big a names.
Yep.
Let's talk first about Conklin, a guy from the Titans.
Yep. So Jack Conklin, one of the better, if not the best, right tackle in football right now. From the Tennessee Titans, he helped Derrick Henry run all over the league this year and really take the NFL by storm in the playoffs there. All of a sudden, they were a hot Super Bowl pick when everyone wrote him off, even Vegas, and Vegas is rarely wrong over there. So Conklin is going to be, I think, 26 by next year, and he was a first-round pick, 8th overall, I believe, in 2016. So what you like about Conklin is not only his run-blocking skills, but also his rookie year, he was the second-rated offensive tackle according to Pro Football Focus. So not only is he a pass-blocking pro, but he's going to clear lanes for Chubb and Hunt in this wide zone scheme. He makes a lot of sense. The problem is, of course, the price tag. He's likely going to reset the market at right tackle, and if the Browns are willing to do that, that remains to be seen. And also, it's going to be a competitive market. Cleveland is not the only team looking for offensive linemen. The New York Giants need one. The Cardinals need a couple, and so on. So it's going to be a competitive market for Conklin, and the price tag is going to be high. But at only 26, 27 years old, he'd be worth it.
Another name that pops up, a former Patriot with some Ohio ties from down Dayton way, Alter High School, Joe Tunney.
Yep. So Joe Tunney, he's a guard for the Patriots, and this guy brings a lot of experience in a short career. He's been in the league for 4 years now, but a 2-time Super Bowl champion, playing, of course, with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. What's not to like about that, you know? To bring a bit of a Patriot way into what this new Browns way is going to be will make a lot of sense. Now, just like Conklin, Tunney's going to make a lot of money on the market this year. Guard has really become a position in the NFL that is getting paid, not quite like tackles, but some of the top guards are getting, $15, $16 million a year. You think Zach Martin in Dallas being one of them who reset the market, and Tunney seems like a guy headed that way who is going to command a big money in free agency and also have a lot of suitors. So it just depends. Again, Andrew Berry said he's going to be aggressive. We're going to find out soon how aggressive he's willing to be.
And again, just to kind of put it all in perspective, Browns pretty much need 2 starting tackles and a starting guard. So
right.
They need a lot of help.
Yep.
The other thing that we mentioned earlier, tight end, and there are a couple of guys you like. Austin Hooper kind of jumps out at you.
Yeah, so Austin Hooper, another guy looking for his second contract, coming off a 4-year rookie deal with the Atlanta Falcons. He was quiet early on in his career, but really came out this year and had 6 different games over 65 yards receiving, a couple 100-yard games, and scored in, I believe, like 4 straight games for the Falcons. Him and Atlanta were not able to find a long-term agreement, so he's going to test the market. We talked about how tight end is a position of need here, and Baker Mayfield is just attracted to that position. It's usually the safer throw. We saw him try and fit it into guys like Demaryius Harris and David Njoku this year, Ricky Seals-Jones, guys who aren't these premier targets, yet they were getting looks. So Austin Hooper would be a guy that could come in, solidify the position, and really build a connection with Baker Mayfield right from the jump, I think.
And another guy, another young guy that really everybody expected him to take that next step. Really hasn't yet, but Hunter Henry is a free agent as well.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, along the same lines as Austin Hooper, a real athletic tight end, a mismatch machine, a red zone monster. The problem with Hunter Henry is his health. He's had 2 knee surgeries over the past 3 seasons. He just seems to can't stay on the field, but when he is on the field, he's a beast, and that could be a way where the Browns come in a little lower on him because of his health injury, and then you get a much more higher return on investment. Because if he can stay healthy, he's going to make plays for you.
And the other thing is in Stefanski's offense, correct me if I'm incorrect, they want guys that can block and catch the ball, and that makes those red zone targets that much more difficult to defend.
Exactly. So Kevin Stefanski came here and really stressed how he wants to have a marriage between the run and the pass game. And really what that means is, and again, these are his quotes, he wants the runs to look like passes and the passes to look like runs. Sounds real simple in theory and perfect, harder to execute. But the key to executing it is exactly like you said, with the tight end. If you have a tight end on the field that can both run and catch, then the defense doesn't know what you're doing. If you're sub-packaging in players that are better pass catchers than blockers, then they have an idea of what's coming. So if you find 1 or 2 guys that can do both, you're going to keep defenses guessing from day one, and that's exactly what Stefanski wants to do.
Ellis Williams, beat reporter for the Cleveland Browns, cleveland.com. Great stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of break, we'll talk about the draft. Browns currently with the 10th overall pick. We'll take a look at what they might do and areas that they will look to improve. More sports, the Les Levine Weekend Winners Edition will continue right here on cleveland.com.
Celebrate Naturestone's 30-year anniversary with a free Naturestone floor. During 2020, we will be giving away 30 free floors to 30 very lucky customers to say thank you for making Naturestone the best concrete flooring solution for garages, basements, and more. Call or visit naturestone.com today to register to win, and we'll send you a copy of our new buyer's guide absolutely free. There's no purchase necessary. Winners will be chosen monthly. With over 30 million square feet installed for more than 60,000 customers, it's easy to see why I always say it's not just a floor. Wow, it's Naturestone.
Got your Ohio Lottery pick 3, I see.
Yup. Those glasses are hip.
Hip? Most people think I'm a square. But what's wrong with that? A box bet can increase your chances of winning. And what is a box? A square. There are so many ways to play. There's coming out the wazoo. Oh, shucks. Look at me yammering on. Put a lid in it, Picky Ricky. Play the Ohio Lottery Pick 3 today.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's Kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The girls' state semis and championships are at St. John Arena. Go to Ticketmaster.com, type in OHSAA in the search artists, venues, and events, and you will be able to find tickets for all the OHSAA championships. That's Ticketmaster.com. Type in OHSAA in the search artists, venues, and events, and you'll see all the championship ticket information. Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We are talking NFL free agency, NFL draft, and of course, the Cleveland Browns, joined by Cleveland Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com, Ellis Williams. Ellis, as always, appreciate the time. Let's take a look at some of the mock drafts that are going around, the recent ones. These are all post-combine mock drafts. We'll start out with ESPN's Todd McShay. Everybody has Joe Burrow going 1 and Chase Young going 2. So we'll pick it up at 3. Jeff Okudah, he has going 3. Isaiah Thomas, who lit it up running at the Combine, going 4. Tua goes 5. Jordan Love has moved into that top 6 for most people. Mekhi Becton, who I found really impressive, they have going 8. And then Wirfs and the Browns getting Jedrick Wills. We'll go through a couple more of these and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So NFL.com's Daniel Jeremiah has Okudah going again 3, Wirfs going 4, Tua 5, Becton going to the Chargers at 6. Again, that's a big man. Simmons falling all the way to 7, and he ran sub 4.6, sub 4.5 even.
Yes, exactly.
And then he has the Browns taking Andrew Thomas, underclassman, a tackle from Georgia, with the 10th pick. And then one more, we'll look at Chris Trapasso. Now, Chris Trapasso has Simmons going 4. You see Tua Love. Wirfs going 7. He has the Browns giving up a 4th-round pick to move up 2 spots to take Mekhi Becton. And then the Cards taking Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver for the Cardinals, who a lot of people think is one of the best receivers to come out in a number of years. So even among the guys who are trying to project it, nobody has a defined tackle, and a lot of it's going to be who's available there.
Right, exactly. And I think that's one of the most interesting things to watch in the build up to this NFL draft. Are one of these offensive linemen going to separate themselves from the pack? Like you just said, you just went through it. It could be Thomas, it could be Wirfs, it could be Becton, it could be Wills. None of them have separated themselves yet. We thought the Combine would do so, but Becton at 6'7", 350 pounds, runs a 5'1", and then Wirfs jumps like a 36-inch vertical and runs a 4'8", 5'40", the fastest lineman time there is. And you have Wills looking great in his agility drills, and Andrew Thomas talking about how he loves running wide zone and would love to block for Nick Chubb. So every one of these guys are showing that they're worthy of being the top tackle, and of course they all want to be the top tackle. So that's what I'm looking for, to see who separates themselves, because that's what it's going to come down to. And that's why I find that trade so interesting, to trade up to go get their guy, because not necessarily does someone need to separate themselves in a consensus. They need to separate themselves amongst the Cleveland Browns front office. So if the Browns, between now and the draft, find a guy they want, it wouldn't surprise me if they go get him, because though there's 4 guys and you can say, oh, wait and see, we'll take the best available. If they have the guy they want, like a quarterback, you go get them, and they'll have that opportunity.
Right. And again, if you identify, you and I don't know the difference between these guys by and large.
Right.
But if the Browns personnel people fall in love with one of them, and it costs you a 4th-round pick, go get them.
Exactly.
And then if you're wrong, but at least you got the guy you wanted. You and I were talking, we were both at the Combine last week, and Mekhi Becton is just a big you're 6'7", and they officially list him at 364 pounds. Can you imagine a guy like that running like he does? And it's easy to see why he jumped out.
Right, and you nailed it there. Becton, at the start of this season coming in, had more of a 2nd, 3rd round grade. Everyone saw the size but didn't know if he had the parts, the skill. Well, he put all that to rest, both with his senior season and then at the Combine this year, running 5 flat basically in the 40 for a guy his size, his stature, long arms, thick biceps. These are the things you can't teach at the offensive line position, and it's why Becton is really solidifying himself as a top 10 pick, if not higher now. Yeah,
and the thing that you heard when he was talking to the media is he wants to punish defensive linemen, which if I'm a running back or a teammate, it's like, come play for me.
Exactly.
You know, the mindset you heard. Here's the thing that I wonder. If the Browns do go out and sign a tackle, maybe even a higher echelon guy and a lower level guy, could you see them potentially trying to go different position? Could you see them trying to find a way if Simmons slips down to 7 to try to go up and get a linebacker as well?
Right. So I was kind of pounding the table for Isaiah Simmons on Twitter up until he ran that, I think, 4.39 40, and then everyone figured out, not that it was any secret, but the whole Twitter world knew what kind of prospect Isaiah Simmons is and will be in the NFL. So when the rumblings were there, the chances, the forecasting that he could fall to 10, that would be a situation the Browns couldn't pass up. As we've talked about with Simmons, he's going to be the new type of defensive player in the NFL that can cover anywhere from your best receiver to your most talented tight end to your running back coming out of the backfield. If somehow Simmons is there at 10, I don't see them passing. Now, you asked about moving up. That is an interesting thing that could happen, and the only way I really see it happening is if, like we said, the Browns identify maybe 1 or 2 offensive linemen. If they really tier this thing out, if they see 1 or 2 guys they want, but they're gone, and then the other 2 they're not so high on, and they think they can maybe find a guy at 41, and they address the position in free agency, maybe you could see a guy like Simmons coming to Cleveland in a small trade-up or something like that. You can't miss on Simmons, but I also don't think you can miss on these tackles too.
The other thing is free agency, which will, the legal tampering period starts in a couple, we'll know in a couple weeks.
Right.
And the one thing that, we mentioned last week on this show is Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski didn't tip their hand even remotely what they're thinking. So you'll get a good idea of what they're thinking in the draft. If they don't go out and get one high end and another tackle, it's a pretty safe bet. Right. Tackle's going to happen at 10.
Right. And really, whether what happens in free agency or not, it almost feels like that's what has to happen at 10. Again, the depth of the position is there, but everything's going to be gone by probably the top 20 picks. That's how highly graded these offensive tackles are. Usually you see maybe 1 or 2 tackles in a class like this, and now you're looking at 4 of them. So even if they do pass on a tackle at 10 and think they can trade back and grab one in the 20s or so, these guys aren't going to be there. So it really does feel like offensive tackle is the position, and luckily for the Browns, it's okay that it's not a secret because there's a plethora of them.
What do you see in later in the draft? What areas do you think they address? Again, they have a fairly high pick in the second round. What do you think they address in second and third rounds as well?
Yeah, so I'm not too proud to share. I've kind of been nerding out on the Draft Network's draft machine, just trying to figure out how this draft plays out. And one thing I keep getting stuck on is that pick 41, it depends on the simulation, of course, but this linebacking class gets really thin really fast. Of course, that's a position the Browns need to address. If it's not Simmons somehow in the first round and they go offensive tackle, they need to find a linebacker and safety in this draft. There are some safeties I think they can find in the third and fourth round, but 41 might not be high enough to land a guy like Patrick Queen out of LSU or Ken Murray out of Oklahoma. And these guys are getting late first round, early second round grades. Now, could they stay at 10 and then trade up late in the first round even, or move up in the second round to grab one of those linebackers? I think that'd be a home run move for the Browns. And if you can land one of the top tackles in the draft and the second or third best linebacker in this draft, the first 2 rounds of this draft are going to be exciting. And then after that, you're looking at skill positions like wide receiver. It's a deep class, one of the deepest in years. You could find a third, fourth round guy to not only solidify that number 3 pass catching role, which was a mess all year in Cleveland last year, but also you start grooming a potential heir to both Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. By all reports, they're going to be here next year, but things change fast in the NFL. You don't know how long that's going to last. So I think it goes offensive tackle, linebacker, safety, and then you got to find a receiver or tight end on the offensive side.
Well, you mentioned, Higgins will leave probably via free agency, kind of fell out of favor with Freddie Kitchens. Right. Not sure why that was, but it is what it is. Who are some safeties that you like that might be around later in the draft for the Browns?
Yeah, so for people that know me, I'm from Minnesota, so I hope this doesn't come off as a Minnesota bias thing, but Antoine Winfield Jr., Golden Gopher, really has a cool story. He was there for really the complete turnaround of the Gophers program. He was there when they weren't winning games, thought about transferring, but he stuck it out with P.J. Fleck and went on to have the best season that the Gophers have seen at safety in a very long time, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Back of the Year. He's a guy who, because of his size, he really is only a 5'8", 5'9" player, but runs well. His dad, of course, Anton Winfield Sr., Ohio State Buckeye standout and longtime NFL pro, both with the Bills and the Vikings. So he comes from the cloth of a professional and had the big year this year, junior season, to show why he is a rising prospect on these GM's boards, I'm assuming. But he's a guy in that sweet spot, second or third round, that the Browns could find and plug in. Best case scenario, he's an Earl Thomas type guy, smaller, but he has the speed to cover the field and the instincts to know where the ball's going.
Ellis Williams, Browns beat reporter, great stuff. We're going to take a timeout, and we'll come back on the other side of break and wrap up this edition of More Sports. And Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Stay with us.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had two choices. I was accepted into a 4-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
If a piston makes it go, it's in this show. March Motor Mania takes over the 2020 Summit Racing Equipment IX piston-powered Autorama. March 13th, 14th, and 15th at the IX Center. Show cars, antique trucks, construction equipment, hot rods in the asylum, motorcycles, military vehicles, and themed car clubs. New for 2020, the Throwdown Monster Trucks and the return of Fat Man's Invasion. With Euros, imports, sport compacts, and lowriders. Kids 12 and under are free. PistonPowerShow.com for details. Discount tickets on sale at Discount Drug Mart locations and Summit Racing Equipment in Talmadge.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. The girls' state semis and championships are at St. John Arena. Go to Ticketmaster.com, type in OHSAA in the search artists, venues, and events, and you will be able to find tickets for all the OHSAA championships. That's Ticketmaster.com, type in OHSAA in the search artists, venues, and events, and you'll see all the championship ticket information.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant. Whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at SmileyOne.com.
Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Just about out of time on this week's show, but before we go, I want to remind you that legalized sports wagering a little bit over an hour away from downtown Cleveland, Presque Isle, Downs and Casino, right off of I-90 in Erie, Pennsylvania. 50 state-of-the-art touchscreen betting kiosks in the Bet America Sportsbook, right inside the casino. Some of them are right inside the casino door. You can run in, make a bet, run out. You put your money in, touch a couple of buttons, and your bet slip gets pushed out. You grab it, and you're on your way. Again, Presque Isle, Downs and Casino, little over an hour away from downtown Cleveland, right off of I-90 in Erie, Pennsylvania. Legalized sports wagering, the Bet America Sportsbook. That'll do it for this edition of More Sports and Les Levine. We'll see you again next Friday right here on cleveland.com. Remember, Les Levine back in the chair Monday from 6 to 7. Have a great weekend. We'll see you again next week.